Despite it being called Borderlands 4, it's actually the 5th game in the franchise, and trust me, I know it can seem daunting coming into a game and not knowing any of the previous story, especially when everything over YouTube right now seems to be mostly about the story. So that's why I'm making a follow-up to a video I made a while back with some new information, which is basically one giant roundup of everything you need to know going into Borderlands 4. This video is more for new players, but it's also for players who have played the Borderlands games and are just out of the loop on what's going on. But before we get into the video, please don't forget to sub to the channel if you want to stay up to date on everything Borderlands 4. I really don't want to jinx it, but I'd love to hit 65k before BL4 comes out, so if you want to help me and do your part, it would be greatly appreciated. And so let's get right into it. I've got a bunch of things to go over, but first of all, let's start with the biggest misconception, which I'm going to clear up right now. Lilith is alive. At the end of Borderlands 3, in order to save Pandora and stop it opening and freeing the Destroyer, which, just for the record, would be bad, probably the worst thing that could happen, Lilith flies into Elpis and phase shifts it out of the sky. She does not destroy it, she does not die, this has been confirmed by numerous people now, and Elpis just disappears. Now, yes, one of the biggest misconceptions is that when Lilith does this, she dies, but this has been confirmed to not be the case by Randy Pitchford. Additionally, in DLC 6 for Borderlands 3, at the final mission, it closes out with Ava literally stating that Lilith is out there and we are going to go and find her. So if you weren't already up to date, yes, Lilith is not dead. She is alive and she will most likely be making an appearance in Borderlands 4. But moving on to another character, this is always fun to talk about, the Watcher. What is the Watcher? Who is the Watcher? And where is the Watcher? A lot of people that are familiar with the Watcher think this character has been forgotten about, and this is not the case at all. So a little quick recap here. The Watcher shows up for the first time in Borderlands, the pre-sequel, guarding what many people viewed as the antagonist of the game, which was Colonel Zarpedon. At the end of Borderlands, the pre-sequel, the Watcher explains to the Vault Hunters that a war is coming and that we'll need all the Vault Hunters we can get. And then, just nothing. Radio silence. We never heard about the Watcher, we never really saw the Watcher, until Borderlands 3. In one of Nyriad's echo logs, we'll get to her soon, she mentions that the Watcher was there when she sealed away the Destroyer. And by Scourge the Invincible in the Guardian takedown, where Scourge says that it did what the Watcher could not. So if you knew about the Watcher and thought that it had just been forgotten about, here's your breaking news that no, this is not the case. Gearbox are very well aware of the Watcher, and it is highly possible that the Watcher is going to be in Borderlands 4. And so you remember how I just talked about how Lilith is alive and how I just talked about the Watcher? Well, those 2 points are actually connected. Here's why the Watcher is important. In an echo log in the Fight for Sanctuary DLC, Lilith actually explains that when the Watcher was talking to her, it actually mentioned that she would need to make a choice in the future. I'll play that clip for you right now.
Rick, let me explain.
No, nothing to explain, Lilith. You were gonna kill Athena, an unarmed prisoner. For what?
She helped cause everything that happened with Jack. I know nothing could undo that, but I got mad.
Lil, I know about mad. But when I killed the guy who sold us out to Jack, Roland kicked me out. And he was right. Roland was a leader. If you're gonna act like that, what makes you think you can live up to him? That Guardian saved you from a mistake, but you still made it. I hope whatever it told you was worth it.
It just said there was a war coming, and that I'd have to make a choice.
Yeah, well, keep your war. I'm out.
So what the Watcher was most likely referring to here was the moment at the end of Borderlands 3 where Lilith has to make the choice whether to save everyone on Elpis and save Pandora and basically save the world, or just let it die, which I don't know why she would ever do that. But there you go, that's your recap on the Watcher and Lilith, two very important characters which will most likely be in Borderlands 4. It's pretty concrete at this point, and we'll talk a little bit more about that soon. So speaking of Borderlands 3, it is also very highly likely that the Borderlands 3 cast is going to be present in Borderlands 4. So I would say it is a good idea to play Borderlands 3 if you've not already done that. If you're a new player just getting into Borderlands, play Borderlands 3, and that is at least going to get you relatively in the loop for what's going to take place in Borderlands 4. One of the characters from the game, Zane, who was a playable Vault Hunter, already showed up in the trailer. So yeah, it's highly likely that this is only the start of a trend and we're going to see more and more appearing. And while we're here, if you don't want to play Borderlands 3, let me explain basically what the ending caused. So like I explained earlier, at the end of Borderlands 3, Lilith had a choice to make. It was either to let the Destroyer out, or to stop Elpis from opening Pandora. Elpis is Pandora's moon, and it's also the key to opening Pandora, which is a vault. Vaults are prisons, and they keep stuff inside. And what is inside of the Pandora prison is the Destroyer, the most deadly thing in the universe to our knowledge. So Lilith makes the decision to take Elpis away, and because Sirens are drawn to each other, it's safe to assume that Elpis is teleported alongside Lilith to the closest location where there is a Siren, but in this case, it actually takes it to the planet of Kairos, which was hidden by basically a cloaking device in the corner of the galaxy. And so Elpis crashes into this cloaking device and completely rips a hole open in the atmosphere of Kairos. So this is actually interesting because it's now possible there's a Siren on Kairos or somewhere near Kairos, and that's why Elpis went there alongside Lilith. But that's a whole nother topic for another day. If you want to see that video, leave a like on this one. Now, speaking of this Siren, let's talk a little bit about the 7th Siren, because this is a story beat that might come into play in Borderlands 4. In Borderlands 3, Nyriad, who was also a Siren who sealed off the Destroyer, leaves behind a log and explains that the 7th Siren must never be found. The reason for this is that there is always, at every single time, usually 6 Sirens in existence, and never any more than that. If there is more, they're usually artificial or fake Sirens, but Nyriad here specifically speaks of a 7th, and that if the 7th is found, it could be really bad. Now, if there is a 7th Siren out there, it's very possible that they are hidden away on Kairos. This would explain why there is this force field keeping it hidden in the galaxy. So, very important stuff to keep in the back of your mind before you play Borderlands 4. Could be some big reveals there. And on the subject of the 7th Siren, let's go even deeper into the rabbit hole and talk about a character known as Emily Swan. Now, I'm not going to go too in depth here because this is an even deeper can of worms, but I'll leave a link to a video where I did go over this in the description down below. I'd highly recommend going and check that one out. So currently, Emily Swan is a mysterious character who we don't know much about, but we do know that she is the only character who has had an interaction with the Watcher, who we talked about earlier, who we don't have much details on. In fact, she's the character we have the least detail on in the entire franchise when it comes to interactions with the Watcher. And even though we think that this may be the playable Siren, which Gearbox at the time of recording this video have not revealed, it's actually more likely that Emily Swan is the 7th Siren because of her ties to the Watcher, and because she has been unaccounted for since the events of Borderlands 1, which took place well long ago. But Emily Swan is on Kairos, and she could be hidden away, right? Or the 7th Siren could be hidden away. But what is Kairos, and let's talk about what's going on there. Well, as I mentioned earlier, Kairos is a hidden planet, and for that reason we don't actually know right now, but we do know what's going on within Kairos. So apparently when we start Borderlands 4, Kairos is basically on the brink of total destruction because of a war that's ongoing between a group called the Rippers, led by the evil queen Callis, and another group called the Order, led by a guy called the Timekeeper, who we'll talk about soon. Now, remember all the way back at the start of the video when I mentioned that the Watcher at the end of Borderlands the pre-sequel warned about an incoming war. So, interestingly enough, the war the Watcher was referring to was not the events of Borderlands 3, but we don't know if it is the events of Borderlands 4 between this war that's going on with the Rippers and the Order. And while this might not be the war the Watcher was referring to, even still, it is possible, and I basically think at this point it's undeniable that this is a war which will serve big purpose in the grand scale of the Borderlands storyline. One of the things we need to talk about when we go over this is that a group known as the Eridians are still unaccounted for. While we do have lore to suggest that all of the Eridians are basically dead at this point, it's very important to know that I'm going to go over something later which could completely erase this from history. Oh, and just while we're here, that Watcher character I was talking about, that is not an Eridian. The Watcher is a Guardian. That's a common misconception that even myself makes, and no, that is not the case. The Watcher is a Guardian. But just so we know, even though the Eridians are supposedly dead and have probably been dead for thousands of years, it isn't too far-fetched that they could make an appearance, because Kairos is one of the most mysterious and basically the most mysterious place we've ever seen in Borderlands, up there with the likes of Elpis from Borderlands the pre-sequel. Alright, I know I've taken you on a roller coaster with this video, so let's start wrapping it up. Let's go over 3 final things which are very important to know. Firstly, Randy Pitchford noted that at the end of the Borderlands reveal trailer, the Timekeeper's vault is yellow and not purple. Vaults are typically purple in Borderlands, so this is why Randy pointed this out. He wanted people to know that there was something significant with the color of the Timekeeper's vault here, and it not being purple is a little peculiar, right? Now, we don't know why it's yellow. We don't know what is inside the Timekeeper's vault. We don't even know if this is the Timekeeper's vault definitively. But what we do know is that this is shaping up to be a huge twist in the story of Borderlands 4. It could be holding something, someone, or somewhere. We genuinely do not know, but it is going to be a pretty big story beat when they eventually do reveal that. Okay, we're almost at the end. You've done really good. You've been learning a lot, so hopefully I haven't driven you insane. Let's talk a little more about this Timekeeper guy, right? Referenced by Nyriad in Borderlands 3. What is all that about? So, once again, Nyriad is a siren who helped seal away the Destroyer a long time ago. While she was doing this, she was being watched over by the Watcher who I mentioned, and she left behind a bunch of logs before she went away. One of these logs mentioned 3 vault monsters. The first is Grave Ward, who we actually do fight in Borderlands 3. The second one is the Traveler, who we've also encountered. And the third one is a mysterious fella named the Timekeeper. Now, interestingly enough, we haven't seen the Timekeeper yet, but we are going to in Borderlands 4, and it looks like the Timekeeper is the grand antagonist of the franchise. And it's also shaping up that it may not be too far-fetched that the Timekeeper has the ability to reverse events in time. And so for this reason, we get to why the thumbnail of this video is what it is. This could mean that characters who died, like Maya, could potentially be brought back from the dead, and while we don't know the rules on how that may work, it very well just might. It could also be a case that characters like Handsome Jack, who are antagonists, could come back also. And if they can come back, it makes you wonder what else can, or where else can. So definitely something you'll want to bear in mind, and while it's not concrete, it is something which, if it does happen, you don't want to be caught off guard by it. And so hopefully everything I've mentioned in this video helps, but the most important thing that we have to bring up so far is that at the time of recording this video, New Tales from the Borderlands is not canonical. Nobody needs to die. Now, if in the future New Tales from the Borderlands is canonical, this is going to be very bad for the story, because that game was a writing train wreck which completely destroyed a bunch of established characters and completely flipped the lore on its head, not in a good way. So if you're from the future and you're watching this video, please leave an F in the comment section down below, because I am sad right now. I'm watching this video back, probably in a Discord call with some buddies, and we're probably drinking heavily.